A young woman disappears from her own home while her parents sleep just one room away. Detectives can't find a single clue and it seems impossible to solve the mystery. But eventually, the case takes a shocking turn, revealing an unexpected truth and leaving the entire country stunned. Alicia Rose was born on February 8, 1980 in Marham, Ontario. As a baby, she was adopted by a couple who surrounded her with love and care. Her parents later divorced, and Alicia lived with her mother, but she still saw her father often. He loved being outdoors and his greatest passion was canoeing. He would often go to Lake Ontario where he could spend hours paddling across the open water. Eventually, he even started teaching kids how to canoe at a local camp after finishing school. Alicia landed a sales job at HP's Canadian branch, where she quickly proved herself to be a hard worker and reliable. At the time, she was still living with her mother, who had remarried. Together with Alicia's stepfather, they converted the basement into a fully equipped apartment with its own entrance. So, Alicia could stay close to her family while still having her own freedom. On August 16, 2005, 25-year-old Alicia went for an afternoon walk with her mother and their dogs. Alicia was excited. She had just learned that she would be getting a promotion the next day. She shared the news with her mother, who wasn't surprised at all, knowing how serious Alicia was about her career. When they returned home, Alicia's boyfriend, Sean, stopped by to congratulate her. They spent a few hours together and around midnight she came home. The next day around noon, Sean called the police to report Alicia missing. He explained that when he got home the night before he tried to call her, but she didn't answer. He thought she was asleep and didn't think much of it. But when Alicia didn't answer the phone the next morning, Sean became worried. Sean drove to his house and saw his car still parked outside. That immediately struck him as odd. Alicia should have been at work hours ago, especially since it was the day she was supposed to be promoted. He knocked on the door, but no one answered. So he walked around to the back of the house and saw the gate wide open. On the grass lay Alicia's shoes, an empty cup, and a pack of cigarettes. That was enough to panic him, so he decided to call the police immediately. After that, Sean called Alicia's mother and she and her husband rushed home. When they arrived, several police cars were already outside. Officers searched the house, but found no sign of Alicia. There were no obvious signs of a struggle, but detectives noticed something very disturbing. It looked like Alicia had not slept the night before. Her bed was neatly made, the freshly washed clothes she had planned to put away were still lying outside. And in the bathroom was her ring, which she always took off before bed. Furthermore, all of her belongings, including her keys and wallet, were still on the table. Police quickly confirmed that she had failed to show up for work and officially opened a missing persons investigation. Detectives quickly concluded that Alicia hadn't simply left the house. This looked more like a kidnapping. While there were no concrete clues inside the house, her shoes lying near the open gate pointed to something sinister. And since it appears Alicia never slept that night, investigators believe she may have been abducted right after her boyfriend left. Sean arrived home and called her just 15 minutes later, but she didn't answer. It seemed someone had grabbed her as she stepped out to see her off right near the open gate. Alicia's mother hadn't heard anything unusual, and a search of the neighbors hadn't turned up any clues either. With no other leads, the police turned their attention to Sean, the most obvious suspect. He was the last person seen of her, but detectives struggled to find any motive. The two had only been dating for about a month and a half, and everyone close to Alicia said their relationship was going well. Police searched Sean's car and home, but found nothing suspicious. They also talked to her neighbors, asking if they had seen anything strange like her taking out the trash in the middle of the night, but that didn't lead anywhere. Eventually, the detectives began to doubt her involvement. They investigated Alicia's circle of friends and acquaintances, but nothing suspicious was found. So, detectives launched a massive search operation, setting up a command post inside a local school while the children were away on summer vacation. They brought in sniffer dogs, helicopters, and appealed to the public for help. On the first day, about 60 people joined, but by the next day, the number had grown to nearly 400. The response was so overwhelming that police actually had to send some volunteers home because they didn't have enough resources to handle such a large group. Despite this, the search for Alicia quickly became the largest in Ontario history, and her story spread far beyond Canada's borders. There are several reasons why this case attracted so much attention. First, no one could understand how Alicia could disappear from her own backyard in a matter of minutes without a sound, without witnesses, and without any real clues. And second, from the beginning, many people pointed the finger at her boyfriend, convinced that he had somehow committed the perfect crime. One detail that particularly raised suspicions was the fact that Sean called the police as soon as Alicia didn't answer her phone. He had Alicia's mother's phone number, but instead of calling her first to see if she knew where Alicia was, he went straight to the police. About a week and a half after Alicia disappeared, the media reported that Sean had refused to take a polygraph test and was no longer cooperating with the police. This news further fueled suspicions about him. The reporter also spoke directly with him, and he admitted that he believes he is now the prime suspect in the case. Meanwhile, the search yielded no results. Police set up an emergency hotline and received hundreds of calls, but none of them brought them any closer to finding Alicia. Eventually, the detectives had no choice but to call off the search operation and close the command post because the school they were using had to reopen since summer vacation was over. A month passed and investigators still couldn't find a single new lead. They canvassed ex-convicts living in the area, interviewed hundreds of Alicia's neighbors, talked to her coworkers, but every avenue led to a dead end. By then, detectives were leaning toward the idea that whoever kidnapped her must have known her personally. That would explain why no one had ever heard her scream. That was until September 20th, when the case took a surprising turn. A man walked into the police station with his lawyer and announced that he was the one who killed Alicia Ross. The man was 31-year-old Daniel Sylvester, Alicia's neighbor, who lived just a few feet from her house. He said that around 1:30 a.m. he went out for a walk and stepped into the narrow alley between their homes. That's where he met Alicia. Seeing her there in the middle of the night surprised him, and he asked what she was doing. Daniel told her she had every right to be standing outside her own house. An argument ensued, and according to Daniel, when Alicia insulted him, he completely lost control. He punched her, knocking her to the ground, and then continued beating her when she tried to fight back. Enraged, he banged her head against the stone walkway several times until she stopped moving. That's when he realized she wasn't breathing and he had killed her. As he confessed, Daniel even lay on the floor in front of the detective, physically reenacting how he had beaten her to death. Panicked, he froze for several minutes, not knowing what to do next. Then he made a decision: he had to dispose of the body. He dragged Alicia to his garage, cleaned the blood off the walkway with a garden hose, and lined the trunk of his mother's car with cardboard. By the way, his mother was asleep in the house at the time. He then stripped off his and Alicia's clothes, put the clothes in a trash bag, and wrapped Alicia's head in rags and duct tape to stop the bleeding before putting her in the trunk. Afterward, Daniel returned home, took a shower, and changed into clean clothes. Around 5 a.m., he got into his mother's car and drove about an hour to a small town called Manila. He found a remote swampy area and dumped Alicia's body along with a trash bag containing their blood-stained clothes. When he returned home, he suddenly realized that along with his clothes, he had also accidentally thrown away his own wallet containing all his bank cards and driver's license. Over the next few days, Daniel kept returning to the scene, desperately trying to find the bag, but he had hidden it so well that he couldn't find the exact spot again. However, he still remembered exactly where he left Alicia's body because he had hidden it separately. A few weeks later, panic began to creep in. He was afraid the police would finally find her. So, he returned to remove her body. By then, her body was badly decomposed, and he had to collect the remains as positively as possible. Piece by piece he wrapped it in a tarpaulin, put it in the trunk, and drove about 40 minutes to a small town called Cobacan. There he found a secluded place in the woods and hid the body again. After that, Daniel confessed that he satisfied himself to relieve tension but swore that he never touched Alicia sexually and that this was never his motive. After completing his confession, Daniel said that he never meant to kill Alicia, but his anger got the better of him and he couldn't control himself. One of the detectives told him that he had to write a letter to Alicia's parents and apologize for what he had done. Daniel broke down in tears, admitting that he had no right to take their daughter, and wrote a short apology on a piece of paper. He also said that he deeply regretted the pain he had caused his own mother because he knew that she would now have to live the rest of her life carrying the shame of his actions. After Daniel's confession, the detectives asked him to show them where he hid the body. And sure enough, they found Alicia's remains there because her body was badly decomposed. Experts could not determine the exact cause of death, but they did confirm that at least 30 of her bones had been broken. They also discovered that not all of the remains were at the location, suggesting that Daniel had left some of the remains there in the first place. Immediately afterward, he was arrested, and the news shocked the community. Throughout the investigation, Daniel was never considered a suspect, even though he lived right next door. Soon, more details about him began to emerge in the media. Daniel had no criminal record, but he had struggled with anxiety and depression since childhood. He had difficulty interacting with others, which made him an easy target for constant bullying. Struggled with women, so he grew up withdrawn and isolated. As an adult, Daniel spent almost all of his time at home. None of his neighbors really knew him, and even Alicia's mother admitted that she had only seen him a few times over the years, and even then only in passing. Eventually, Daniel was charged with a second count of premeditated murder, though his defense argued for manslaughter, so the case went to trial. The trial began in May 2007, nearly 2 years after Alicia's death. Prosecutors argued that Daniel had intended to kill her and that the original charges should stand. They argued that Daniel had probably been watching Alicia for some time. After all, Alicia lived just a few feet away. They suspect Daniel may have been spying on her through the window, and over time, this becomes an unhealthy obsession. That night, when Alicia is standing outside alone, Daniel may see an opportunity to approach her. However, he instead scares her away by sneaking into a dark alley. Prosecutors emphasized that Daniel had numerous opportunities to stop the attack. However, he chose not to. Then, instead of calling the police, he decided to hide the body, spending the entire night cleaning and disposing of evidence. Weeks later, he even returned to move the body to make it harder for investigators to find it. Because of all this, the prosecutor was convinced that Daniel wasn't motivated by guilt when he confessed, but by fear of being caught. After all, he had thrown his wallet and ID in the same bag as Alicia's blood-stained clothes. Sooner or later, someone would find them and link him directly to the crime. For that reason, the prosecutor insisted that he deserved to be convicted of the second murder. His lawyer tried to convince the jury that Daniel never intended to kill Alicia, that it all happened in a fit of rage. According to the defense, Daniel lost control after Alicia insulted him and wasn't thinking clearly about what he was doing. They also pointed to his lifelong struggles, constant bullying that left him with low self-esteem, and anxiety and depression that followed him into adulthood. However, something came to light during the trial that didn't work in his favor. A psychiatrist who had evaluated Daniel before the court testified that Daniel had admitted to violent fantasies about women. For example, he imagined jumping out of bushes and attacking them. He also admitted that he sometimes exposed himself to strangers on the street. These revelations further led the jury to believe that Daniel had likely planned to kill Alicia. Ultimately, he was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 16 years. After the verdict, Daniel tried to appeal his sentence, but to no avail. His first opportunity to apply for parole came in 2021, but there is no record of him being released. Since there is no public information to the contrary, he is likely still behind bars. It's also worth noting that shortly after Daniel's arrest, a local newspaper issued a public apology to Alicia's boyfriend, Sean. For a month, many media outlets had been portraying him as the prime suspect. According to Sean's father, that time was devastating for him. Not only did he lose his girlfriend, but many people believed he was a murderer who got away with it. After Daniel was sentenced, Alicia's parents created a memorial fund in his name. The funds are used to sponsor canoe lessons for children in the national park he loved so much. Share your thoughts on the story in the comments, and don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed my video. Thanks for watching.